Welcome to the second Roundtable Series, the Roundtable of our series on early learning and care facilities hosted by Build Up California. This series is part of our Building Blocks for an Equitable Recovery Initiative, through which we explore the most effective strategies to equitably expand, improve, and sustain early learning and care facilities as we face and recover from the shocks of the COVID-19 pandemic. My name is Ericka Erickson, and I am the Program and Policy Officer for Early Care and Education at the Low Income Investment Fund. I have the honor in this role to coordinate the development of Build Up California, a statewide network of early learning and facilities champions launched just last year. In this Roundtable series, we are shining a light on issues related to EC facilities in the greater Los Angeles area, but the topics are relevant to other areas around the country as well. The greater LA area encompasses 5 counties: Los Angeles, San Bernardino, Ventura, Riverside, and Orange County. It's the second large metropolitan area of the United States, only behind New York. So as we prepare for this roundtable, I want to share an action alert and some information about logistics. First, the action alert. This is a week of action. Please join us in educating our Congress representatives about the importance of including resources for the physical infrastructure of childcare in the Build Back Better Act. So please, when you have a chance during this webinar or after, please visit the National Children's Facilities Network website and go to the page Take Action, and I'll share the link on the chat in the middle of it. And please click on the few buttons, put your name, so we can send a letter to your representatives saying about the importance of keeping the investments for childcare infrastructure as part of Build Back Better Act. Of course, as part of the $450 billion investments that the childcare field is asking for. So now the logistics. This webinar is being interpreted in Spanish by María José Araújo. Gracias, María. Entonces, si desea escuchar este evento en español, haga clic en el icono de globo terráqueo en la parte inferior de la pantalla. So this roundtable will start with remarks by all our guest speakers, followed by a Q&A session. Please use the chat or the Q&A function to share your insights and questions. Our guests will be answering the questions using the Q&A function and discussing some of them during our Q&A session. I would like now to introduce our moderator for this discussion, who will introduce our speakers. Leanne Drogin is a senior program analyst at the Office of Early Care and Education, which for the County of Los Angeles County Department of Public Health. In this role, she is now the lead on early care and education facilities for the County of Los Angeles. Yeah, when I got the news that they had someone, I was like so excited. So with this role of taking care of facilities, right? So it's a new role for her, and she'll share with us some overview of what's happening in Los Angeles on ECE facilities, and to kick off our conversation and introduce our guest speakers. So thanks for joining us today, Leanne, and now it's with you.
Thank you, Ericka, and the Build Up California team for hosting this great roundtable series on ECE facilities. It's truly an honor to be with everyone today. I'm grateful for this space for us to learn and share. And as we're highlighting at these events, facilities are a key element in creating a high quality childcare experience in centers and family childcare homes. As you know, a well-functioning, comprehensive ECE system requires investment in facilities because this impacts other components of early care and education. And in LA County, one of the ways that we're addressing issues related to facilities is through the Office for the Advancement of Early Care and Education, the OAECE. The office shapes policy recommendations facilitates planning and provides a range of services aimed at improving the availability, quality, and access to early care and education programs. It also oversees our local planning council in LA County, which is also called the Childcare Planning Committee, and the Policy Roundtable for Childcare and Development Commission, which was established by the Board of Supervisors to build and strengthen the field of childcare and development by providing recommendations to the Board of Supervisors on policy, systems, and infrastructure improvement. In 2017, the Local Planning Council Needs Assessment, or CCPC, found that only 13% of infants and toddlers of working parents had access to licensed space. This was alarming, and it was our first clue what was going on. So the Office of the Advancement for Early Care and Education, the Local Planning Council, and the Policy Roundtable came together and developed a unified strategic plan for 2020 to 2025. And this includes 4 priority areas. The first is access, and then quality, workforce, and families and communities. Within access, one of the strategies focuses on advocating for funding to build and update early care and education centers and family child care homes. One method the OAECE is one method that the OAECE takes action is through a policy directive or directives that come from the Board of Supervisors. So for example, earlier this year, the Board of Supervisors passed, it's called the Pathways for Economic Resiliency. And this is a multi-county department directive to develop strategies to help build back better economic opportunities and development for LA County. The second priority of this initiative focuses on the quality and affordability of ECE and includes expanding ECE facilities by doing 2 things that are being developed for recommendation in this strategy. One is to support providers in navigating the system of licensing and zoning and permitting and other regulatory processes that pose a lot of barriers to providers. And so what's being proposed is a full-time staff position in the county's regional planning office dedicated to helping providers navigate the system. Another is to create an online toolkit with informational resources for providers, including user-friendly summaries of state and local code requirements and permitting processes. So a common thread through all this work is the importance and the need for collaboration, true partnership at every level, and for other county departments, organizations, and electeds to all truly work together. Okay, with that, I'd like to welcome some of our dynamic and exciting experts that we have with us today, and for them to share their own information, insights, and expertise on planning for childcare facilities in the greater Los Angeles area. And I just would like to just note that greater Los Angeles area, I've recently learned is outside of LA County. And so I want to welcome all those that are here coming from us, coming to this, this roundtable from LA County and the surrounding counties as well. It's really exciting to have so many folks from beyond just LA County part of this conversation, because we have a lot to learn from each other. So with that, I'm going to start with introducing Yessika Magdaleno. She's the owner of Little Flowers Family Daycare, and she's the owner and founder of that. And she also has established the Childcare Business Institute. Yessika has been a family childcare business owner in Orange County and a leader in her field for over 20 years. She's her Childcare Business Institute supports providers with workshops and representing providers in public meetings and coaching on various aspects of the business. She's an active member of the Childcare Providers Union, California's union, representing over 40,000 family childcare providers. And this has been instrumental for the first ever collective bargaining agreement with the state of California. Go union. Okay. She's also an active member of advocacy organizations like Childcare Changemakers and Build Up California. I also want to introduce a dear colleague. I've had a privilege to get to work with her on other projects, and this is Ritu Mahajan. And she's a supervising senior staff attorney from Public Counsel. She oversees community development projects. And Ritu has worked with Public Counsel since 2009 and assists small business and nonprofits in low-income communities of color with legal needs. She has special expertise in advising family child care providers and nonprofit child care centers on a range of issues such as land use and zoning, landlord tenant problems, and others. And when I say others, I mean others. So like many of the people on this panel, I know she works tirelessly on behalf of child care providers. And then next, Kristen Anderson. She is a child care planner, consultant, and author of the Planning Childcare in California. Kristen is a child care planner and consultant who has been a leader in the field for decades. She's the author of what's known to be as a Bible for ECE professionals, the Planning Childcare in California. She's been participating in many initiatives related to child care facilities, and currently she serves on the Build Up for San Mateo Advisory Board and Build Up California Working Group. And lastly, we have Joanne Brion, and she's president and founder of Brion Economics Incorporated. And she's been working as a consultant on urban economic issues and childcare planning and policy for over 30 years. She has prepared and managed more than 50 studies involving childcare planning, including developer fees studies, which are super important. So can't wait to hear if you have anything to share about that. And local planning council facility needs assessment and housing and the linkage between housing and childcare. So with this great and exciting group, let's get started. We want to kick off the conversation with a provider's voice. So we'll start with you, Yessika. Can you please share your perspective on how we should consider home-based childcare businesses as we plan for childcare facilities?
Yes, of course. I'm going to share my screen with you so I can show you what I prepare. Give me 1 second. Did you guys see my?
Yes, we do.
Okay, thank you. Alrighty, so I'm going to start, and as Leanne had said, I'm a family childcare provider in the city of Orange County, doing this for 21 years and helping other providers out there that in anything that they need. So the message from family childcare providers: safe and developmentally appropriate childcare and early learning facilities are crucial to help children to thrive. Yet, the infrastructure of these spaces have been long neglected. We need to tell everybody that we need to be included in everything that it has to do with childcare. There are unique benefits inherent in the home-based nature of family childcare business beyond the intimate family-like settings. Family childcare providers often take special care to invest in their homes and in their communities, as it is essential to the success of their business, allowing them to attract families to programs and to meet state health and safety standards where applicable. Family childcare providers often act as the neighborhood watch, as they are home during the day and are dedicated to ensure the safety of the children in their care. Family childcare providers business allow them to earn the wages necessary to be stable tenants or homeowners while providing a valuable service to the neighborhood and supporting children, families, and the economy. Dedicated families funding for the purpose of renovations that will allow for operation of safe, quality family childcare programs. The physical infrastructure of a childcare settings plays an important role in facilitating the health, growth, and development of young children. Yet, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Office of Inspector General found that 96% of children 96% of the childcare programs receiving childcare subsidized dollars had one or more potential hazardous conditions and non-compliance with the state health and safety requirements. California can and should invest in the infrastructure of family childcare business and other early learning facilities in the same way as they do K-12 education facilities. Childcare providers are working with a broken system. Providing high quality childcare is imperative to ensure the children are safe, healthy, and learning. Yet the high costs can prevent providers from running a sustainable business and is beyond what most working parents can afford. Moreover, childcare providers earn a razor-thin profit margin, and often providers are unable to provide the facility-related repairs, upgrades, renovations, and maintenance that keep childcare safe. Because of COVID, many of us invested financially in creating outdoor programs for the children. However, the unhealthy hair quality has forced many providers to bring children indoors all day long. We are unable to open our windows or doors for ventilations because of the smoke. The air quality is bad when fires are going on. In addition, family childcare providers do not have air conditioning. Even with fans on, the heat is oppressive inside. Fans, no ventilations, and extended period of indoor goes against CDC recommendations for the safe operation during pandemic. In this slide, you can see a provider who had to fix their facility, with the COVID-19 procedures. And this cost this provider approximately $5,500. I'm gonna show you a video of this
Quiero
same
mostrarles
provider.
en esta hora el patio de nuestra casa donde los niños juegan.
Here the kids are playing. This is the area where the kids are playing.
Está su playground. Y algo nuevo que hicimos ahora es instalar.
These are the adaptations that we did.
Les muestro. Es
Showing you
la estación que
the
tiene
station.
para lavarse las manos.
This is the hand washing station.
Todas las instrucciones.
Here we have all the instructions
Vasos para que tomen agua fresca.
so that they can drink drinking water, have the dispenser.
So there was a little tour that he gave us to the changes that they have to make in the facility. This is another family childcare provider who had to reinvent herself, to provide childcare, not only for the little kids, but for the kids in their school, how to maintain the 6 feet or how to maintain apart from each other. How can you help us? A shared responsibility, ensuring that early care and learning facilities are designed and equipped to facilitate children's early learning cannot depend only on childcare providers themselves. Rather, it requires a wide array of expertise beyond childcare development, including but not limited to architecture, design, environmental health, business development, real estate, financing, landscaping designs, and a community development. Bringing together these areas of expertise, facility designs process contributes to stronger childcare facility positively impacting the child outcome. Investing in early childcare means investing in family childcare. Working families choose family childcare for a variety of reasons, including cost, convenience, and culture, making these programs an important component of the early care and learning landscape. Similar to center-based early learnings, family childcare providers require infrastructure investments to address their facility needs, which may include minor repairs, renovations to meet the state licensing standards. Family childcare providers may also require support in addressing additional challenges, including local zoning, ordinance, regulations set by homeowners, associations, the weather, we may need AC, right? So all of these helps we need, and we cannot do it alone. Thank you so much for listening.
Okay. Well, Yessika, that was really insightful. I appreciated all of what you shared. I'm sure everybody else did. And a couple of things just really struck me as you were talking about the challenges that that family care providers, childcare providers experience kind of on a regular basis, but also especially during COVID. And it's the intersection with environmental justice issues. It's really the definitely in certain neighborhoods we know in LA County and most likely in other parts of other counties that there are pockets of in different communities where the quality of air is just not, it's not healthy for kids to be outside. So one thing that I took away from your presentation is the creativeness and the innovation that family childcare providers are always having to deal with. And I wonder if you're able to speak to some of the, if family childcare providers have access to how do they structure their facilities in ways to be able to be adaptive to the types of age groups that they're serving, but then also as these other factors come and influence the kinds of the way that they have to provide services. And it just does seem like it requires that collaboration between experts in how to the best use of space and zoning for that, and childcare providers, and saying this is the kind of programming that we have, high quality programming we need to provide, and how everybody needs to come together. And I'm just curious if there's if any examples of where you've seen that or experienced that happening.
Well, when COVID hit, right? We didn't know what to do. We didn't have nobody to help us out. We were asking each other. I reached out to First Five County. I reached out to the quality care because they come and they observe us and they tell us how to improve our programs. I reached out to many people out there, and nobody exactly knew what do we need to do. So we kind of started figuring it out by ourselves, one another, one provider to another, reading the documents. Then a few months after, or I will say weeks after, that's when we start getting, you know, the recommendations that we needed to follow. That how do we supposed to follow the CDC directions? We didn't have the help, you know, to get the gloves, the masks, everything that we needed to continue open our business. I think is why so many providers, and I think are around 7,000 providers who closed in the state of California, and they haven't opened yet because we didn't have the support. When they asked me to participate in this event, I was so happy because I wanted to tell everybody that providers alone cannot do it. Everybody's expecting things from us, right? Licensing department, the CDC department, the parents, the Department of Education, everybody's expecting providers to do what they're supposed to do, but yet we don't receive the support that we need. And you look at the videos I sent, that was only one provider who had made these changes, and it cost $5,500. I have to make changes on my backyard. It cost me $7,000. And many providers like me had to have these things done. Now, when we received the first opportunity to receive the grants, we were not included. So many providers were rejected. It wasn't until we start saying, well, the grants for small businesses have to include family childcare providers, because yes, they included center, but not family childcare providers. And we were not getting the grants or the loans that we needed to continue open. And so then they started to do that. So every time we have to come up, and we have to raise our voice, and we have to say, okay, well, this is happening. This is what we need. Thanks God that we got a union, and the union is backing up in everything that we're doing now, but it's also taking, time for people to understand the family child care provider is part of the infrastructure of childcare, and they have to include us. Otherwise, we're gonna close down, and we're gonna have a very difficult time for families and for the childcare.
You're absolutely right. And it's so exciting to have you part of this panel, and childcare providers need to be part of all the conversations. And this is the time to really capitalize on the awakening of the importance of childcare in general, but also the huge need around improving the facilities for centers and family childcare homes. Thank you so much. We're going to move on to Ritu. And hi, Ritu. She'll come on. And as you come on, I'm going to go ahead and start asking your question. So as a lawyer for over 12 years and experience with working with childcare business owners, can you please share with us what are the most common issues you address with them and the possible systemic changes we can promote so you have less providers having to knock on your door and seek your services and help and advocacy?
Yeah, hi everyone, sure. So in my time at Public Counsel working with providers, I think the number one issue I get calls about is landlord-tenant problems. So a lot of, in Los Angeles especially, housing is super expensive, as you all know, and so a lot of providers rent and they face opposition from their landlords. It's like the number one call I get, whether it's they're trying to rent a place and the landlord says, oh, no, I won't rent to you because you run a daycare, or they're already in the place and the landlord's kind of harassing them or giving them a hard time because of the daycare. So I'm going to talk about it today in my part of the presentation, but we did strengthen the laws protecting childcare providers through SB 234, which is helping, but there's still going to always be more education needed, and there's going to be, unfortunately, lawyers needed to advocate for providers to, have them enjoy the rights that they're entitled to. I also get a lot of calls about understanding licensing regulations, appealing licensing citations, provider not understanding why they were cited. We help a lot of providers with just drafting their contracts that they have families sign. And now with COVID, we've updated those contracts to include COVID specific regulations. A lot of questions about employment law, and then questions of course about zoning and land use issues. Okay, let's see. And okay, I'll just jump right in to the training. I don't know if someone's gonna be able to share my slides. Okay. Okay, we can move to the next slide. Okay, so yeah, I sort of went into some of this already, but at Public Counsel, we actually have a specific project dedicated to early care and education. Our focus is on increasing access to quality early care and education and supporting childcare providers. We provide free legal advice to low-income childcare providers and providers serving low-income communities in LA County. And so I've added here our phone number where people can call and leave a message. That's our intake line, as well as our online application. And I've already gone through some of the types of issues we help with. Okay, so as I was alluding to, effective January 1st, 2020, SB 23 went into effect, and basically what it says is that cities and counties can no longer regulate large or small family childcare homes. Family childcare homes are to be considered a residential use of property for the purposes of all local ordinances. Essentially, what this law did is it was definitely a huge win for the field of family childcare. It was the first time the Child Care Facilities Daycare Act was updated in 40 years. And it strengthens some of the protections that providers have. Essentially now, cities and counties can no longer require zoning or use permits or business licenses for any family childcare home, regardless of whether it's small or large. And in terms of advocacy related to SB 234, Public Counsel has been doing some advocacy on this issue because even though it went into effect last January, there are quite a few localities that continue to illegally require family childcare homes to get a zoning use permit or a business license. Sometimes this is because the city is just not aware of SB 234 or is behind on updating their municipal code to reflect SB 234. Or to be honest, staff just hasn't been informed and there's not a lot of coordination between different departments. So Liif's been spending time educating city staff regarding SB 234 and also doing some individual advocacy for providers that reach out to us saying, oh, I live in X city and they're still requiring me to get a business license or a permit. Can you help me advocate for myself in that city? And so we'll write letters, we'll make calls and basically inform the city that they're not allowed to impose such requirements on providers. Okay, now I'm going to turn to child care center advocacy. As many of you know, City of LA has a tremendous shortage of licensed childcare. Only a fraction of the families who really need it are able to access it. 96% of the children under age 2 lack access to a licensed childcare center in the City of LA. And the regulatory, zoning, land use barriers to opening childcare facilities in the City of LA, but also throughout the county, really hurt small business owners, but also hurt low-income families and communities that these businesses could potentially serve. Just so everybody understands how it works in the City of LA right now, if you want to open a childcare center, centers are allowed by right in certain zones. So in most of the commercial zones, you can open a center without having to get a zoning permit. But the problem is it's really hard for childcare providers to find suitable sites in a lot of the commercial zones in LA City. The reason is those sites that they find do not meet licensing standards, do not have enough outdoor space. And so a lot of our clients end up finding sites that are not in commercial zones, but in residential zones. And if you want to open a center in a residential zone in the City of LA, you do have to get a conditional use permit. And these permits, the current process for getting these permits is very confusing, costly, and it takes a lot of time. First of all, it costs more than $5,000 just to apply for the permit. But then when you submit your application, you have to provide plans, like a plot plan, floor plan. And usually these are not things that you can do yourself. So you have to hire an architect to make these plans, which can cost thousands of dollars. The other issue is when you apply for these permits, there has to be a hearing where neighbors and the public are invited to attend and express support or opposition for your center. Many times it takes more than a year just to get your hearing because there's a backlog. The city has a lot of these hearings that they have to conduct for all different types of uses. And so your hearing might not be from a year from when you submitted your application. Providers are also expected to spend a lot of time going to neighborhood council meetings and getting neighbor support for their project. Because if you don't do this, then neighbors are more likely to come to the hearing and express opposition for your center. So we've had providers that have spent months going to neighborhood council meetings, trying to convince the neighbors that having a childcare in the community is a good thing. And it's not gonna necessarily bring up these issues that the neighbors are concerned about, which are usually related to parking, noise, traffic. The other problem with the process as it stands now is that providers must not only work with the planning department, but also the Los Angeles Department of Building and Safety to obtain other building permits and also ensure that the property is fire compliant and compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act. Obtaining those permits and making your facility compliant can really get super costly, to the point where I've had providers essentially who've already spent like $50,000 on this process just give up and say that they can't move forward. So the point I'd like to make is that, navigating these really onerous land use approval processes really sideline a lot of prospective childcare providers. Potential providers who want to open a small business in the city simply can't afford to spend the time and resources that the city requires. This is leaving a lot of potential childcare facilities out of the market, and it's hurting not only small business owners, but also children and families that could be supported through these programs. So now we're going to turn to some of the advocacy that Public Counsel has been doing along with partners such as Advancement Project and the Central City Association. So as a unique type of small business with with the high need for ECE that we know we have, ECE providers, we believe that ECE providers deserve the most streamlined and cost-effective process for approval that the city can create. So here are some suggestions that we've presented to the city. Our absolute, I guess, if we could have what we wanted, we would be asking the city for allowing childcare centers by right in all zones. San Francisco does this. Basically, they removed the zoning permit requirement for childcare centers by permitting them in all zones except for industrial zones. All a provider has to do is submit a form to the city letting them know that they intend to operate a center at a particular location. They don't have to get any type of planning zoning permit for a center. So of course that would be this easiest way to handle childcare center requests. If that's not possible because we cannot get the city to agree to that, another option would be administrative approval. And what that would look like is allowing centers to open by right in certain zones as long as they agree to a certain set of conditions, such as, we're going to be open for these hours, this is how we're going to handle parking, this is how we're going to handle traffic. So as long as a provider agrees to those conditions beforehand, they would be allowed to open their center in various zones without having to get a zoning permit. So that's one option. If that's not plausible or the city is not open to that, the third option would be having the city agree to an administrative use permit, which some cities do this, like Burbank does it, where there's no hearing, the fees are much lower, and basically it's just a decision will be made by a body, like a planning body, but the neighbors will not be involved, and it's like a faster approval process. So these are some different options that we're kind of exploring with the city. The other thing to mention, if we cannot eliminate the conditional use permit requirement completely, we've also talked to the city about waiving or delaying costs of the permits. So like I said, the permits can get super expensive. So trying to lower or waive the costs or have providers pay some of the fees after they've opened when they're making income. And we've also been working with the city to advocate for a pre-submittal review process. So like was mentioned earlier, the county is thinking of having a staff person housed in the regional planning department to really help providers navigate this land use process. We're kind of advocating for that same thing with the city. Santa Monica does it. You know, they have someone that's basically designated for ECE facilities. They're very knowledgeable about that industry, and they can meet with the provider before the provider spends all this money, you know, going down this road of opening a center, to really give them guidance on, is it going to be feasible to do this? This is how much it's going to cost. This is the process, so that providers can go into the process with open eyes and understanding all that's going to be involved. So the city is exploring that as well. Santa Monica also has a planning guide for childcare providers that want to open centers. Again, that's something we're talking about with the city as well. Another option we're exploring with the city is working with, in San Francisco, they do this, but the city of San Francisco has a partnership with the local park and recs department. And basically it allows for certain childcare providers to use the park space to satisfy their outdoor space requirement. Because in the city of LA, a lot of properties do not have the 75 square foot per child outdoor space that licensing requires. And so if we could explore this possibility of partnering with local parks and using their outdoor space to satisfy that requirement, I think that we could get a lot more childcare centers opened. So these are just some of the ideas that we're talking to the city about. And I'm also going to be speaking with folks doing this on the county side, so we can make sure the city and county are aligned.
Sorry. Thank you, Ritu. That was extremely informative. And there's some folks already this is resonating with across the counties. And so I just want to acknowledge all the hard work that you and the public counsel team have been doing. It's been incredible, and just want to say thank you for all the tireless work that you guys have done. We're going to move on to Kristen Anderson. And Kristen, I was wondering if you could please let us know your perspective on how our public administrators can support supply building. How can our cities, counties, and state have more progressive general plans and zoning codes, for example, to create a more favorable environment for the creation of new childcare facilities and the sustainability of the current ones?
Well, I'd like to say that both elected officials and city staff and administrators can be involved in simplifying this whole process that Ritu just talked about. I will start my presentation, or Ericka is going to run it, I guess. And I think that I'll be answering this question indirectly and directly in some ways. First, I just want to ask a rhetorical question, sort of high level. So whose responsibility is it? Who plans for childcare facilities in our state? State departments, social services, education, housing and community development, Office of Planning and Research, local planning councils, city, county governments, school districts. So each of these has or could have a role, but there's no designated entity or coordination. So that's the problem. So today I'll focus on the local government planning for communities, because that's the level at which facilities is the part of our childcare system most impacted by local policies. And you just heard Ritu talking about that there's childcare is often missing in community planning and development. And these are critical pieces for families, housing, jobs, and transportation in between. And childcare is not considered there. Next slide. So supportive childcare policies can facilitate development of centers and homes. City and county general plans, which were mentioned, as a long-range planning document that every city and county is required by the state to to prepare, and it can include policies and implementation programs that address existing and future childcare needs. And then Ritu also talked about zoning code and permitting issues. And so some of these bullet points are some of the ways that that can be done, which they are working on in LA County. Build up for San Mateo County's children is our facilities initiative here that has been working with the cities and has succeeded in getting changes made. Like a couple of years ago, City of San Carlos exempted all child care centers from a traffic impact fee that was going to be charged to one provider at $90,000, in addition to, planning and use permit and building permit fees. This is a recent example of Redwood City zoning code changes that were made a few months ago. The first item is bringing the large family childcare requirements, or removing them from our zoning code. And that obviously was behind schedule, but they got it done here. We are finding many cities in our county that actually said they didn't know about the law, which is sort of surprising, but we're working with them to get those changes. And then these other items I've listed are other ways our city is trying to make childcare centers allowable in more places with lower requirements and lower fees to make it easier to develop childcare. And if you want to just Google Redwood City childcare policies, you'll get to the page on the city website that gives more information and links to the general plan section that was adopted in 2010 and other policies. So how do we affect these community development linkages? Having cities and developers and others do planning in relation to housing, employment, and transportation, including family childcare homes in housing developments. But it's important to leverage all sectors' resources in addition to local governments. So school, faith-based employers, developers, and so on. Our local collaboration that I mentioned, Build Up San Mateo County, has been very successful in bringing many of these stakeholders to the table. And we have a pipeline of facility projects across the county with many new spaces in the pipeline. But I would like to suggest that the state should incentivize partnerships to leverage local public and private resources. Next. So this is just one example of a transit-linked childcare center, one of many that the LA Metrolink system built over 20 years ago at several of the stations. This one's in Montclair, but there are others around the greater LA area. Next. So now I'd like to relate this community planning to the current discussions and focus on childcare deserts. I'm sure many or all of you have heard about the childcare deserts, and this is the definition that the Center for American Progress uses. But I think it's important for us to really look closely and think and talk about what this means on the ground, so that we don't just throw money at the deserts and assume that it's going to happen. Deserts look different and require different strategies and partners. We need to understand why a desert exists. It may not just be the lack of facility funds or subsidy funds or usable sites. It may be lack of providers there and lack of provider capacity to even apply for new money. And we know that there is a lack of any technical assistance related to facilities. So that is needed. And providers end up being the default childcare planners, trying to use any available, affordable, properly zoned and financially feasible building or piece of land in their community, which are not always the best quality childcare spaces. Thanks.
Oh, thank you, Kristen. Really interesting to learn about all these aspects of childcare planning, and thank you for sharing so much of your wisdom and experience with us. We're going to move on to Joanne. And Brion Economics is a renowned name in the area of childcare facilities and assessment and plans. Can you please share with us your work with local planning councils and your insights regarding public funds for facilities? And we are going to probably end with you. So thank you for all that you're going to share, and we're going to wrap it up in about 9-10 minutes. Oh, I think you're on. There you go.
Good. Hi. So I'm going to be doing I'm going to try and keep it to 5 minutes. I'm going to share my screen here, and I'm going to. I put together this PowerPoint that I did actually working in San Mateo County in 2017. I did a comprehensive study of childcare throughout the county and looking at each city. And so the whole PowerPoint is kind of walking through all the different steps that we went through in the study and that we recommend. And the way I look at childcare facilities, I want to also just do a call out to Kristen Anderson. We've been working together for 20 years, and on the it's great to be in this shortfall of childcare. I've literally probably never worked anywhere where there isn't a shortfall. One of the key beginning steps is, like Kristen said, is to start with general plan policies, because that is the framework that the planners and city councils look to get direction on where the city needs to go and what are the priorities. And so once you get your childcare as a high priority in the general plan, it kind of it sets up the stage to be allowed to do these other things like create developer impact fees. I really see childcare as an economic issue, and I'm an urban economist as my profession, and really have been working on this for a long time, trying to bring the real estate development community into alignment with the childcare industry and really get them on the same page. So what I'm going to switch to quickly is talking about potential funding mechanisms, both for new development and then also for existing shortfalls. So I'm just going to start with this slide, which is just giving you a sample of what costs are for childcare center development. And, you know, it's ranging from $43,000 per space to $53,000. New portables, $25,000. We're talking about very expensive spaces. You know, childcare takes a long time to develop because of all these hurdles that people have to go through. So it can take 5 to 10 years for sites to finally get developed. One thing that I do in my work is really not just look at current shortfalls, but really look at the next 5 to 10 years, because we know that it takes so long to get facilities built. And so we want to like put in the decision makers' mind that there isn't just this current shortfall, but we're actually going to keep adding to that shortfall if we don't do something about it. So in San Mateo County, we came up with, population growth for 10 years, 60,000 people, going through the math of doing an extra study, we came down with a potential impact fee of $4,600 per unit. This was an illustration of what the actual cost is and what the need is. Based on California law, it's very regulated at the state level that new impact fees cannot be used to fund existing shortfalls. And that applies to any public facility, whether it's parks, streets, storm drainage, any kind of public infrastructure. And so we have to look at funding mechanisms for existing development and what we can use for those shortfalls. And then I'll move on to what can be used for new development. So one of the local funding sources would be a general fund allocation. We, argue with the city council to allocate some funding towards projects. There's sales tax add-ons that can be adopted. These are a little bit harder to get approved, but it can happen. Usually requires 2/3 votes. There's parcel taxes, which are assessment based property tax assessment based on the value or the lot size that would be added on to parcels property taxes. There's various local, state, and federal funding, and then there's foundation funding. So when we're doing a study, we're looking at the possibility of leveraging all these different funding sources. For new developments, what we focus in on is, and what's occurring more and more is voluntary inclusion in residential and commercial projects. Developers are starting to see childcare as an amenity that they can offer to set their project apart and also help them get approval through the public planning process. So if the city has said that this is a really big goal for the city, then we're seeing some developers moving forward with promoting this. Developer impact fees, developer agreement negotiations, policy requirements, like in Contra Costa County, they just require all new development to do a childcare study. Employer built-in funded, community benefits requirement, density bonuses. These are all areas that have can be used or leveraged. I just did a little chart to show you current childcare impact fees. A little highlight here: South San Francisco, Palm Desert, Santa Monica, San Mateo, San Francisco. So you can take a look at that. The project that Kristen was talking about, the Build Up San Mateo, they have a 3,000 space goal for the county as a whole, and they have really been making a lot of progress. They've completed 579 spaces. This highlights this chart highlights the number of spaces by some of the cities in San Mateo County. So there's 2,200 roughly spaces in the pipeline. It's really exciting. So anyways, I'm gonna stop there because I know we're running out of time, and I thank you for listening.
Thank you. That was so interesting. I can't wait to see the slides and just dig into the numbers. We are just about out of time. I want to just ask Ritu, would you briefly be able to just provide a little bit more information on the difference between SB 234 and the CUP that you talked about? There have been some questions around that.
Sure. Yeah. So SB 234 is specifically about family childcare. So childcare in the home, that's under a certain size of kids that you can care for. So it does nothing to help people who want to open childcare centers. And so the CUP process and all the work we're doing with the City of LA is for childcare centers, because we don't have SB 234 for centers.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. I wanted to say a warm thank you to all the panelists and sharing all their expertise and wisdom with everyone today. I'm going to pass it over to Ericka. We're just about out of time. And thank you humbly for allowing me to be in the space with you and moderating the panel.
Thank you, Leanne. Thank you, Joanne, Ritu, Kristen, and Yessika. Thank you for joining us today and for sharing all your wisdom and information. like I was sharing with Leanne, this is only the beginning of our conversation, our work together, right? These roundtables are short. They are only to instigate, share a little bit of information, but we hope that we will have learning circles, exchanging for where we can exchange more information, not only for the greater LA area, but also the whole state of California. So I want to invite everybody to, one, go to our website, become a member of Build Up California, so you can be invited to this learning circles, and also to join us in the future roundtables. I'm glad that Joanne talked about financing childcare facilities, because that's the topic of our roundtable next week. So please sign up for that and take action, because we need the federal resources to come down the pipeline so we can have funds for childcare facilities in our own cities and neighborhoods. So ncfn.org, National Children's Facilities Network. Go there, take action today, and let our Congress representatives know that we need this funding. So thanks again, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day. See you soon. And thanks for joining us.